G'day everyone, and Thursday, 21 of August in 2025, Club Grubbery time again, and joining us tonight, John, your friend and mine, John Ruddick from the Libertarians Party. Great to have you on, John.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's a great honour to be on Club Grubbery.
It's great to have you as always. John, we've been looking forward to this one because there's a lot of stuff going on that's pretty topical at the moment, especially around immigration and protest marches and all that sort of stuff, and a lot going on there with also Israel and Palestine and the whole thing. So, John, we've got a lot of things to unpack with you because you're sort of making a stand on some of these issues.
Well, look, I do feel very strongly about the immigration issue, and I believe that the three most important issues facing Australia are immigration, immigration, and immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And now, when you have mass immigration, which is what we've had post-COVID, because they wrecked the economy, they gave us inflation, and then the only way they thought, let's import a massive number of people to sort of boost things up. Everybody's piece of the pie is getting smaller. The pie's a little bit bigger because we've got more people here. So to cover it up, they've decided let's give us mass immigration. And now everyone's in favour of a sprinkling of immigration, a sprinkling where people can melt in and become very Aussie. And and look, most migrants, almost all migrants that have come to this country, their kids and their grandkids are very, very Aussie. Okay, you think, remember Aussie John from Aussie Home Loans, John Simons,
Yes.
Aussie John?
Yep.
The
Yep.
Aussiest guy you could get, he's Lebanese. You don't even notice he's Lebanese, right? These people, they love their footy, they love a beer, very, very normal people. Okay, now that's because a sprinkling comes in, a sprinkling of people from, you might have a child, they might fall in love with somebody from Bolivia. So, they're going to come and live out here. Okay, that's all fine. Now, but when we have mass migration and then there's no incentive for them to assimilate, and then the stupid government goes out there and gives them all this multiculturalism grant. I was at the budget estimates yesterday. I asked the Minister for Multiculturalism, how much do we spend on multiculturalism every year in New South Wales? 78 million bucks was the answer. Where's this money go? Just a handout to you and a handout to you, a handout to you. I don't know. I don't know why we need this crap. And I believe in the old melting pot. And look, if somebody decides to come and live in Australia, and half the world would cut their right arm off to come and live in Australia, they're basically admitting Australia's a better country than the one I grew up in, that my parents built, my grandparents built. They're saying Australia's better than that. Well, we should be very honoured. We should be flattered. Okay, fine. But when too many come and then they keep their old culture, that's a problem. Now, it's not a huge problem in Australia yet, but you look at Western Europe and England, and it's really, really bad. Europe's been the engine room of civilization for 2,500 years. It's absolutely tragic to see what's happening in great countries like France and England and Ireland and Germany and Scandinavia. It's absolutely outrageous. So we should have a 5-year immigration pause. So we're not saying, you can't come if you're black or you're white or you're brown or you're yellow. No one can come for 5 years. Now, there'd be some exceptions around wealthy businessmen who want to come out here and, build a factory with 100 million bucks. There'd also be some exceptions around marriage visas, okay? Because, your daughter might fall in love with a man from Canada or something, right? Okay, all
Well,
good.
mine did with a man from Egypt, and now they've got 3 beautiful kids together in Brisbane.
And I'm sure that they'll be very patriotic Australians.
They are. They're very patriotic.
So where there'd be some restrictions there'd be some exceptions during the 5-year pause, but we should have a pause. And the best part of the pause, or the second best part of the pause, is we can then have a sober debate for 5 years on shows like Club Grubbery, in our opinion pages, on cable news, in our parliaments, in the street, at the pub. We can have a debate about what's the optimal immigration program for Australia for the next 50 years to ensure Australia remains a shining success. So we need to have that debate, and we need to have a 5-year pause.
Johnny, everything that John Ruddick's saying at the moment, it would indicate in today's culture in Australia that he's a racist. Are you a racist, John Ruddick?
Look, no, I'm not a racist, okay? Because race. I'm a libertarian, okay? We look at individuals, and we don't care about race. We care about reality. We care about behaviour. We don't care about race, and because look, race is if you are a really serious racist, it's actually a very primitive form of collectivism. Okay, where you're saying, well, that person's value, their character can be judged by who their parents were and their grandparents and their great grandparents. No, we don't care about that one little bit.
Great stuff. Johnny Larder.
John, there was a protest a few weeks back on the Harbour Bridge, and it was widely attended. What you were there? What was the mood like? What weren't the media showing us? What was your interpretation of the day? And there's another one planned for the 31st, which is gathering a bit of momentum. Will you be attending that?
Okay, so on the bridge that was on the Bridge March a few weeks ago, yes, I was there. Yes, I marched with some very nice Palestinian Christians and some Australian Jewish people who are concerned about human rights abuses. And what was the mood? Well, I can tell you it was quite similar. A similar thing happened during the COVID protests, which I think I went to all of them. And there's all these nice people out there, not wearing masks, having fun in the sun, enjoying it. And no violence, happy, 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 little kids, Christians, everyone, a few crazy signs, not many. Then you'd come home, you'd turn on the TV, you go onto the internet, and there might be one crazy little sign or one unfortunate incident out of 40,000 people. And then that's all the news wants to talk about is that one crazy, crazy thing. Okay, so the three of us have lived through that. Now it was a similar thing. Okay, so on the Palestinian, it was a very different crowd. There was, I didn't see any crazy people. I saw quite a few Jewish people carrying signs like saying, I'm a Jew, this is not in my name. Okay? Did anybody hit them? If they were anti-Semitic, they would have got hit. And everyone was shaking their hands. Okay, so now I was there because I believe what's happened in Israeli politics is that there's a division between people who do want peace and there are people who do want conquest. Unfortunately, Mr. Netanyahu is clearly part of the we want conquest. And I believe that the Netanyahu faction was licking their lips after the October the 7th. They said this is a fantastic excuse to go and push them out of Gaza, push them out of the West Bank. And, they've basically gone and half the Middle East's now in rubble. Syria's destroyed. Israel's moving into southern Syria. And I think, I took a stand out and some people got cranky at me. But, look, I wasn't doing it because of the polls, but there was a poll out in the Essential poll recently saying 14% of Australians support what Netanyahu's doing. So I think there is a massive consensus that they've gone way too far, and they're making it. They are making it bad for Israel's reputation long term.
I think it says a lot for global politics, John Ruddick, that you can criticise any nation on earth, but you cannot criticise geopolitical Israel. And we've been saying this on this program for a long time. Human rights abuses are human rights abuses. It doesn't matter who's perpetrating them. They get called out. The Americans got called out for a lot of their human rights abuses, in particular Guantanamo Bay and various other places that they've been involved in. But you dare criticise geopolitical Israel, and a lot of people don't realise just how tenuous the state of Israel is at the moment. They're on the brink of civil war. There's a lot of people very, very angry with the state of play over there. So I tip my hat to you because you took some political risk in doing what you did, but that's what this is all about. We don't want politicians to play it safe. We want them to go out there and put their money where their mouths are. So I applaud you for that. I really do, and I support your stand. And I have a very similar view myself. I'm not speaking for John because this is the sort of an issue it is. We can't presume to speak for any of our friends or anything. But all I know is when it comes to my Christian faith, the Bible tells me I'm a spiritual Jew because I believe in Christ. And that's the truth of it. And I am a spiritual Jew. But I'm definitely not a supporter of geopolitical Israel. And I have to say, when you look at some of the Israelis that around the world doing their best to destroy some of us, you've got Yuval Harari, who was virtually 2IC of the World Economic Forum, is talking about saying things like God is dead. It's just taking us a bit longer to bury the body than we thought. So that's the kind of rubbish that comes out of Israel too. It's not all squeaky clean.
Well, look, none of the three people on this discussion can ever have been accused of being a supporter of Anthony Albanese. Okay, we've all been critics of him and we'll always be critics of him. But I tell you what, I predict, gentlemen, that at the next news poll, Albo's polling, which is already pretty high, okay, not because of Club Grubbery viewers, but it is high for whatever reason, it's going to be higher. Here's Netanyahu coming out there absolutely lecturing the Australian Prime Minister, okay, treating us like, like he's the schoolmaster and we're the naughty little boy. No. People will rally behind Albo on this one. And gee, it's so radical what he's done. He says Australia's going to recognise the state of Palestine. There's 197 countries in the United Nations. Do you know how many have already recognised Palestine? 147. Okay, so you've got 3/4 of the world have already recognised Palestine. Now, recognising Palestine, I don't know what it's going to do because you know what they've done? Gaza doesn't exist. Gaza's just rubble, right?
Yeah.
They want to just get him out. They'd be very happy for them to all come to Australia, okay? Or that guy that the Australian government said can't come and visit us, I was speaking to. Now, I'm against blockading anybody, okay? Unless they are got a violent history, I don't want to block anybody, okay? Whether they're on the right or the left or the far right or the far left. But he was blocked and he opened, he said, oh, but get him out of Gaza. They can go and live in England. They can go and live in Australia. No, get lost, mate. So look, what I really believe should have happened after October the 7th. Now look, there's been a lot of massacres in that part of the world since about 1920 on both sides. But the truth is, October the 7th was was so bad it was at a new level. It used to be sometimes there'd be a few hundred people killed, but October the 7th was a lot of people and it was really gruesome. Now, I've got a counterfactual for you. Imagine, gentlemen, if Netanyahu got up. And look, we were all horrified and shocked, okay, when it happened. But imagine if they'd got up and they'd taken you mentioned your Christian faith, Hoody. The most famous Jew that ever lived is Jesus. And Jesus was famous for de-escalating problems, And he said, if someone's taking you to court, settle with them on the court doorstep, okay? Yeah. Jesus said, don't just love your neighbour. He said, love your enemy, okay? Forgive people. De-escalate. Now, it doesn't always work. We try to live by it. Often I am guilty of not following the Jesus principles, but it's basically a good thing. Even if you're an atheist, you should say, yeah, well, Jesus' attitude there was the right thing. Now, let's imagine if we applied the Jesus approach, which he spelled out so beautifully in the Sermon on the Mount.
Yep.
After October the 7th, there was an enormous amount of international sympathy for Israel, rightly so. Now, imagine if Netanyahu had said, look, this cycle of violence has got to end at some point. We've got to stop the retaliation. And so we're going to take the lead because they are clearly the powerful in this conflict. They're the one with the power. So they set the sort of the moral tone. If they had said, look, this is a terrible thing, well over 1,000 Jews have been killed. We've got 200 hostages. But there's about 3,500 Palestinians in Israeli jails without charge, and they're not being treated great. So let's swap our hostages. We'll give them all back. We won't retaliate. We just want to get this thing behind us, and we want to have a once and final and for all peace settlement. And Israel should have been generous. We could have just moved on. But no, we had to go and, I think it's 1,300 who were killed on October the 7th. What death toll are we looking at now? It's got to be 100,000. Okay, and it's not just the people It's not just the 100,000 directly killed by the bombs and the bullets. How many people haven't been able to go and see their doctor? How many people have had a heart attack just because they're stressed out about it? How many people can't eat properly? Okay, so whole thing's a disaster. The good news is that there were massive peace protests in Israel the other day. Okay, and so I just wish there would be a fresh election, and we need to get back. There were Israeli prime ministers in the past who were really pro-peace. You know, they go back the whole Sinai to the Egyptians. And that peace deal with, that was in 1979, that peace deal with the Egyptians has held. Okay, good. Those Arab-Israeli wars in the sort of, you know, the 20th century were largely Israeli-Egyptian wars, but the peace deals work. So it can happen. Jordan's peace. So look, I just hope that the peacemakers can get back in control.
And what's your take on the upcoming 31st protest?
Okay. Well, I'll be there. And I know that there's a lot of talk about who's going to be there, and if that person there, I'm not going to go, or that group's there, I'm not going to go.
Yep.
We could have all sat home during COVID, and we could have said, oh, no, if Johnny Larder's there, he said something crazy 3 years ago, I'm not going because of that. Or we could say, oh, no, I'm not going there because Hoody's going to be there. Or, I'm not going because John Ruddick's there and he's blah, 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 blah. There's one simple message why people should go, a very large number of people should go. We're against mass immigration. It's changing the nature and the character of Australia. So that's a really important issue. So all this, you know, the politics of the march, to be honest, Mr. Larder, I'm not following it. I know what's going on. I'm not following it. I don't care.
Yep.
And there will be people there with different motivations, but they're all going to be united around one thing, which is we've got way too much immigration and it's dangerous. So rain, hail or shine, I'll be there on the 31st of August, and I hope others can join us.
And you know, we said on the show the other night too, Johnny Larder, that, you know, it's important that specific influencers aren't seen to be running it or speaking at it or anything like that. I'm not declaring whether I'll be going to one or not. I'm not saying if I go where I'm going. I'm just going to march with the people if that happens. It's going to be completely neutral from my perspective. I think the less people have to say on stages and sound stages, the better. It's just much better seeing a group of people all walking in harmony about one particular issue. So I think there's been way too much involvement in all of this by a lot of people. You've got to let the people have their say. You can't dictate who's going to go and who's not going to go and who's going to support and who's not going to support. It doesn't matter what any of us think. If the people of Australia are fed up, they need to vent their spleen. They need to go and do it peaceably and show this government that we are sick and tired of government overreach. We want small government. We don't want to be told what we can do at every step of the way. And we don't want our sovereignty given away at the drop of a hat just because it's politically expedient for some woke leftist party.
Well, what I'm fearful about is, I mean, imagine if we sort of, in 10, 15 years from now, we look back and we say, gee, Australia's gone. You know, we could have done something about it at some point. We could have, but, you know, it's finished. And then we could look back and say, gee, you know, we should have taken more of a stand on the 31st of August. But, you know, I didn't get out of bed that day because I thought, oh, you know, Mary Bloggs is going to be there and I didn't want to be there. Okay, so this is why I'm just asking everyone to put it all behind them and let's focus on getting our mates out there on the 31st. Let's not worry about the social media chatter. Let's ring up our mates and say, I'm going, you should come with me. That's what our message should be. If we have a really big, massive rally, it does send a message, not only to the politicians and the press, but it encourages other people in their communities who may not be there on the rally, but who do have concerns about immigration. It inspires them to speak up in their little group, in their little community. They say, yeah, I agree. It's gone too far.
Well, I think people's filters are full, and this is a hangover from COVID, the overreach, people burning Australian flags in the street, police firing bullets. I mean, you name it. We're sick and tired of it, and this is a real opportunity to send a message to the Albanese government and state governments that you know, the people can only take so much of this bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is truly what's going on. On other matters too, John Ruddick, in South Australia in the last few days, emergency powers have been granted to certain officials in that state to do what they're going to be doing in Western Australia under emergency powers. So they can confiscate your property, they can kick you out of your property, they can even destroy your animals or whatever, your crops. Nefarious individuals perhaps might get control. This is really, really bad stuff. This goes way beyond the pale, and it should do for any libertarian or anyone who loves freedom.
Well, is this related to a quote unquote pandemic?
No, it's just emergency powers. There's been an amendment to the Emergency Powers Act, and that went through Parliament as it always seems to do. These nefarious things go through in the middle of the night when everyone's sleeping.
Well, look, I think what happened there is, if we'd had exactly the same circumstances of COVID in the 1970s or the 1980s or even the 1990s, there wouldn't have been 100,000 of us out on the street. There would have been 5 million. We wouldn't have put up with it, right? But then when the powers that be could see that 85% of Australians went along with being treated like a farm animal, probably, us, New Zealand and Canada were the craziest ones about it, okay? And I think what happened is that the people out there, the globalists, they sort of thought, wow, gee, Australia's easy. Let's bring in the digital ID and these emergency powers and everything else. They don't care about it. They're all so prosperous and, got so many busy lives, we could bring in all this crap. So it's like we're the guinea pig now for them because they know there's a few resistors, but not enough. Now, we are growing, and every day, when you wake up, you don't go back to sleep. Okay, once you've been watching Club Grubbery a few episodes, you're not going to sort of go back and read The Guardian, right? So it's a one-way traffic in our direction, but this is the problem I think we've got. So I wasn't familiar with that South Australian thing, but doesn't sound good. I never like the word emergency powers in legislation.
No, well,
Well,
Brad
I'll see if I-
has argued, and look, this would be a follow-on from the IHRs. There's no doubt about it. These things just trickle down, and the ACA, the Aligned Council of Australia, John, we've actually put together an idea to write a letter, and everyone can drop it to their local police station personally, to inform the police officers that they may be required under legislation, if a pandemic is declared, to actually enforce and actually physically hold down people to be vaccinated. And this is the case in WA. That legislation exists. And in New South Wales, we saw this under Brad Hazzard. He just made the rules up as he went. And clearly, Hoodie, this stuff in South Australia is the start of this nonsense occurring again.
Look, it is, and I've just pulled up the post from one of the MLCs that was in attendance at the vote, Sarah Game.
Yes, very good.
She's put a post up, and she said, "This is," and I quote, "Last night, the Melanuscus government, I hope I pronounce this right, I nearly said melanoma."
I thought you did well.
Passed the Emergency Management Miscellaneous in brackets Amendment Bill 2024. Under the amended general powers, in quotation marks, Section 25 of the Act, the state coordinator, whoever that is, and authorised officers, whoever they are given the power to issue directions in any form without limitation. These directions may contravene another law of the state, affect individuals' personal rights, and may use force to ensure compliance.
Oh.
These directions can include breaking into any land, building, structure or vehicle, taking possession of or assuming control over any land or body of water, removing or destroying buildings, structures, vehicles, vegetations and even animals, and ordering real estate owners to forfeit control of their properties and removing people or animals, etc., etc. There you have it.
Well, that's about as bad as it gets.
That if that hasn't got the hair standing up on the back of your neck, Australia, I don't know what is, and that's why the people have to come out. They have to come out. And if some lunatic's going to call you a racist for doing what you're going to do on the 31st of August, then so be it. That's a small price to pay. But go out there knowing your heart, knowing what's in your heart to do for your country and for its people. And not only that, we have to look at this. We're looking at the damage to the culture of Australia. That's one thing. But the other thing is we've got people, Australian people, who are employed and still sleeping in their cars because they can't afford rent, even though they've got a job. There are communities all around Brisbane, for example. Daniel Cinzio, one of our guys we've interviewed a few times, has been supporting these communities with food and goods. Homelessness in Australia is rife. You cannot afford to rent anything, even if you can get something. So it's not fair on the Australian people who don't have housing at the moment. And I don't believe it's fair on the immigrants that are being brought in, because it's going to affect everybody. This is not good for them. It's not good for us. This needs to be more structured and much better planned than it has been. And I think that whole idea of a 5-year moratorium is a brilliant one.
It's hard to argue with. You know, you can't say it's racist, okay? Because we're not going to let people in from England or Canada, okay? We'd probably let our Kiwi cousins in during the 5-year pause. Maybe not. We'll see how we go. But look, the 5-year pause. Look, I'll tell you who's. The left used to be really, really pro-immigration. Even the lefties have started to have a few concerns about it now, right? Because, well, firstly, they're worried about global warming. Okay, it's going to affect our carbon emissions. Okay, well, that's a fairy tale. But there's been 3 big cultural war, referendum plebiscites in this country. In the last sort of 26 years, we had the referendum on the monarchy, gay marriage, and the voice. Now, on all 3 occasions. And the left were just so invested in all 3 of those causes. The really hardcore, high concentration ethnic suburbs all voted right wing on those 3 big cultural issues. They voted for the monarchy, they voted against gay marriage, and they voted against the voice. So these people are, I think that the new migrants do typically vote Labor, because they think, well, Labor let them in most of the time, but they sort of think, oh, well, I'm broke here, and Labor gives me free money. But then before too long, a lot of them get into business, and they want to, and they start to love the country, and they don't need the welfare, and they think, well, Labor's anti-business, and Labor's anti Labor loves all the transgender stuff. Okay, none of these migrants love it. None of them, they just think it's the nuttiest thing of all time.
Yeah.
So look. I think the 5-year pause, I think, is an absolute no-brainer.
Brilliant. Johnny?
Definitely. Well, look, even the services are struggling at the moment. I got told today that there was a 15-year-old boy who waited in excess of 2 hours for an ambulance on a football field in Wagga with a broken leg.
In Wagga?
In Wagga. So, I mean, New South Wales ambulance couldn't run a hot bath. Dr. Dominic Morgan, how on God's earth are we at a point in this first world country where a child has to wait in excess of 2 hours with a broken leg on a football field in a major centre like Wagga? It is an absolute disgrace. And yet, we've got all these people that are out there, the Justin Paws of the world, the police officers, there's ambos, there's nurses, doctors that still can't go back to work. And this is what's going on. It's just beggars belief.
Look, and the institution that's responsible for so much of our decline in the last 20, 30 years is the Liberal Party. Okay, because the Liberal Party is meant to have been standing up for these values. The Liberal Parties are meant to have been, running efficient governments with low debt, but also they were the ones that have always been more cautious about immigration. But the Liberal Party, is just not the. I don't know if it's ever going to come back. Look, they might win an election they might win elections in the future. It just goes around. Because what's the difference between Liberal and Labor? They're the same bloody thing. Yeah. Okay, but I mean, will the old Liberal Party, which by and large was a very good party up until about 20 years ago, and that's why Australia's a great country. From Federation 1901 up until today. The Liberal Party and its forebears, because it changed its name about 6 times, but it was the same institution the whole way through. They run the country for about 72% of the time. Yeah. Labor's only ever won 2 elections in a row, more than 2 elections in a row on one occasion, which was Hawke and Keating. They won 5 because they basically sold out everything Labor Party stood for. But so Labor has a record of short-term governance. Now, Albo's won his 2nd term. History says he's not going to win again. Now, I suspect he will because the Liberal Party is so useless, but things can change. So, but yeah, look, it's so People are complaining about this immigration rally on the 31st. They're saying, well, I don't know who's organising it. I don't know who's organising it. The Liberal Party should have been organising it. That's what should have happened. Now, they're not going to do that, of course, okay, but the old Liberal Party would have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So getting back to what John's point was about, the poor state of New South Wales ambulance, we have seen some common sense start to reign in Victoria, which is a state completely void of any common sense in the government area. That premier down there is just another female version of Daniel Andrews. She is so far off the planet, it's not funny. But we've seen common sense prevail for the Victorian firefighters, nearly 50 of them going back to work as we speak and being retrained. And it's about bloody time, let's be honest. But we've got in Queensland, we've got 48 or so paramedics who should be going back to work because the judge has ruled it in favour of the police, and the police sent their guys back to work, and they're happily ensconced in the Queensland Police Service. But we've still got New South Wales Police hanging out like the dog in the manger that just will not let go of this retribution it has for those people who stood up rightfully against those mandates. How long is this going to go on for? What are you seeing anything happening in the New South Wales Parliament that's going to indicate a push to get these people to do the right thing and get their men back to work, men and women?
Look, I bring it up, several times a year. I had a meeting with the police minister recently in her office. She wanted to talk about something else. Since I said, Minister, can I talk to you about this other thing? She said, yes. I said, look, the numbers are hard to know, but I think we're only talking about, I think there was about 70 police officers in New South Wales who were stood down because they didn't want the vax. And I said, Minister, look, I'm guessing you're not up to your 10th COVID vaccine. She said, well, shit. I said, well, if you're not, that's the official guidelines. You're meant to have 2 every year now. Okay. And I said, look, I think these people have been vindicated. None of them have died of COVID, surprisingly, because they didn't take the vax. I said, oh, look, I'm guessing with these numbers, but I understand of the 70 who got sacked, 50 of them moved on. They've got another job. They don't want to go back to the cops, whatever. But I said, Minister, I understand there's about 20. Might be a bit more, might be a bit less. But they really loved being a copper. That's what they want to do. And, a lot of these cops, it's not just them being a cop. Often their dad was a cop and their uncle's a cop and their brother's a cop and their son's a cop, okay? It's often a bit of a family thing, okay? So I said, look, and I've spoken to quite a few of them. They've got other jobs. They don't like those other jobs. They just want to be a copper. Now, isn't that a good cop? Don't we want more cops who just love their job? And look, it's just stonewalled. It's just zero interest. It's just zero interest. I point out what had happened in Queensland when I think it was the nurses were first back in, and you mentioned about the coppers, okay?
Yeah.
And I don't think the cops got laid off in places like Canada and England, which were pretty crazy about COVID. Okay, it might have been different from state to state, but it wasn't like Australia. No, and then I said to the minister, I said, look, it wasn't even the Labor Party that did it. It was the stupid Liberal Party. It's not like there's any political downside for you here doing this. No, just totally disinterested. So all we can do is keep up the fight. It'd be good if we could get a few more sort of freedom people elected to the New South Wales Parliament, so we can sort of make more noise. But there is the only light at the end of the tunnel is what's happening in the other states. And look, this Christopherly up there in Queensland, he seems to be doing a pretty good job on a number of fronts, on the global warming front, on the transgender surgeries for kids. He paused it in January this year, and he's having a 12-month review. He's appointed some big academic to have a look at it. I can't wait till that report comes out. Can't imagine it's going to be real good. So look, he's doing not a bad job up there, Mr. Christopherly. I didn't have much expectation from him, but good on him so far.
Well, the destruction of those medical samples relating to the COVID research that was going on up there is he's managed to keep that in play, and or not in play. He's actually paused that, and those samples aren't being destroyed now. So that's that's heading in the right direction. And we put out a call once again. We'd love to have him on the program to tell us. I'd like to ask him what his plans are for the camps that they built up there that Anastasia Palaszczuk was so proud of, the the quarantine camps. What are they doing with those? They're massive buildings and complexes, and they're just sitting. Are they sitting there idle? What's going on? And what is his plans for those? So there's a lot of questions. The fire ant issue. We'd dearly love to ask him about that. Another massive government overreach that just seems to be totally ill-founded. So lots of stuff still going on, John.
Well, John's very busy, aren't you, John? He seems to be one of the very few in there that are actually having a crack on issues that people would see as being too big to deal with, or not popular. And the Libertarian Party under his stewardship are really doing some great things in Parliament. And the RFS is another thing that we've highlighted here, Hoodie, haven't we? With the absolute uh, unbelievable stuff that's going on in that organisation, both in the rank and file stuff, but in the aviation sector. And John's been at the forefront of that, and spoken with Chris Smith, and making some inroads in relation to that. So that's been a positive.
Yeah, well, there's always a million battles to fight. Look, we need more people in here. That's the bottom line. Okay, so but yeah. So look, bottom line is I am enjoying being in Parliament, but I mean, it's like we're losing a battle every day. Occasionally we can have a positive influence, but look, we get up there and say as much as we can. We throw as many punches as we can.
Well, and as you know, John, like these issues to actually, they're very complex, aren't they? I mean, that aviation issue alone with the RFS, I mean, that is just so complex to actually understand what is going on there, that you can understand why no politician would want to take it on. It's just Pandora's box.
You know what I reckon I've worked out, John, that the public out there think that the politicians are powerful, and they are. Well, the ministers are on paper, constitutionally, they are powerful, right? But when a new government comes in, you get the premier or the prime minister there. He just sits up in his office. He says, "Oh, you can have health, and I owe you something. You can have transport, and yeah, I need to stop stabbing my back. Yeah, you can have police." They just hand out all these ministries, right? And so if you become, say, the Minister for Transport or something, right, you're a powerful person, yeah? You've got thousands of employees under you, you've got a massive budget, okay? But it was just a flip of that. He could have been the Minister for Health, right? But he just ends up the Minister for Transport, right? And the ministers are just, look, there's some ministers are good, okay? I think they're all well-intentioned, Liberal, Labor, whatever. They're all well-intentioned, right? But the really powerful people are the senior bureaucrats, and no one knows who their names are. I mean, you can dig them out, but they don't. These are people who don't want public profile, okay? But they want to build their little empire in the bureaucracy, and governments can come and go. The senior bureaucrats are still there, and these senior bureaucrats, like we were saying before, how coppers like to, often it's a family thing. These senior bureaucrats, often their grandpa was a senior bureaucrat, and their daddy and their wife and their cousins. It's all a big family thing, right? And these bureaucrats, they join the public service, straight out of uni. They might have been there for 40 years. They know bloody everything about that department. They know absolutely, they know the personalities, they know the history, they know where the regulations come from, they know how the courts have interpreted legislation, they know everything. And so the poor little minister's up there with all the power, and these senior bureaucrats come round, and it's like the old show, Yes Minister, right? Yeah, they know exactly how to get the minister to agree to what they want, because that's what they're expert doing. So this is why, gentlemen, look, I know there's a lot of bleak things happening out there at the moment. There is a great beacon of light, and his name is Javier Milei in Argentina. Now, he'd inherited a mess. Imagine having Albo as your prime minister for 50 years. That's Argentina. That's Argentina. 50 years of Alboism, right? Now, Milei comes in and he abolished half of the government departments on day one. Said, go away. Gone. Cut taxes. Look, Argentina is still got its challenges, okay, but it is on the up. It is on the up. So, surprise, surprise, you cut the size of government, and that just means that people can flourish, that people can be creative and dynamic and entrepreneurial and happier, without having all this repression from the government, all this silent repression, the taxes and the regulations and the fear of the big brother. So Javier Milei is showing us how it's done, gentlemen. The answer is just cut the government and have faith in the people. And you know, this Malay revolution is catching on in Latin America. There was an election in Uruguay last night. Okay, a guy out there who says, vote for me, I'm going to do exactly what Malay does. He's into the final two. They've got a runoff election in a couple of months. Now, I don't know who's going to win, but and Ecuador, they've got a president. He says, yeah, we like what Malay's doing too. Guy in El Salvador, he's just like Malay. So yeah, we've most of our lives, gentlemen, we've sort of thought of Latin America, you know, has one sort of crisis after another. It has right-wing dictatorship or left-wing dictatorship and a military takeover and poverty, fair bit of poverty in Latin America. Okay, but maybe Latin America could be the ones that, you know, show the world how it's done.
Unbelievable. And you said that, did you say 50 years of Albanese?
Yes, yes. But Argentina used to be a wealthy country. It used to be as wealthy as Australia. How did it end up being a total mess? 50 years of Alboism. That's what it would be like. That's what that is. So you walk around Argentina and there's still beautiful buildings. They're all run down, okay, but you can see what the place was like 100 years ago. Martin Place, just down the road here. Next time you walk down Martin Place, just stop and have a look at these buildings. They are beautiful old colonial buildings. They are impressive buildings. Argentina's buildings are twice as big, twice as impressive, but they're all rotting. Okay, that's what happens when you've got 50 years of Alboism.
What a bumper sticker that'd be, 50 years of Albo.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
John, another great initiative from the Libertarian Party, which you're championing at the moment, and I reckon this has got a lot of potential, is the housing opportunity for regional places, essentially. Give everyone a bit of an oversight about what that's about, because I think that's a really positive thing that you can talk about.
Well, look, we've got about a dozen councillors elected across New South Wales last year for the Libertarian Party, and some of them, you know, particularly intelligent, like John Ruddick. And a few of them came to us and they said, look, you know that there's about 250,000 rural residential properties in New South Wales which are over 4 or 5 acres. And it's really, really difficult to build a second residence on your farm. It's not impossible, but there's a hell of a lot of local council red tape. And then there's then they have all these weirdo rules where if you build a second residence, now who might want to live in the second residence? Well, grandma might want to live there, kids might want to live there, seasonal workers might want to live there, you might want to Airbnb it out, a whole lot of reasons. Now, but it's different from each council, but generally speaking, the rules across New South Wales is they say, well, I suppose you can build a second house, but it has to either be exactly 1/3 the size of the primary residence or 3 times the size of the primary residence. I asked, why is that rule? No one knows why that rule was there. Anyway, so what we've proposed we went to the government because look, I will give Chris Minns his due. He's good on development. He's good on housing. He wants to make the place, you know, cook good, and we're in his corner on that front. And the Liberals are getting better too. They were weak, but they're getting better because we've got to. Can you believe how crazy it is when we've got this massive continent and a relatively small population, and we've got a housing crisis? You know, 90% of the world can't believe how much land Australia's got. Okay, but somehow why is that all this government regulation? Anyway, so what we're proposing, that we take the local governments out of the ability to say no to a second residence. And we say that if you want to build a second residence, you can build a second residence. And it's up to you how big it is. Some councils say you can build a second residence, but it has to be adjoining the main primary residence. We say, look, you own the property, you love the property, build a second residence. And you don't have to subdivide it. Okay. Now we would like them to be able to subdivide it, but you know, we want to get the government to go along with this. And so we had a vote in the Parliament about setting up an inquiry to look at whether we should have this type of reform. And I'm very pleased to say the Parliament, you know, about 6 or 7 people from the various parties got up and they all said this is a great idea. Liberal, Labor, even the Greens got up. Legalise cannabis said it's a great idea. And we've set up this inquiry. I'm the chairman of it. We're going to be going around New South Wales talking to people in rural communities. We're going to say, look, this is going to be a good thing. You know what it's going to do? These farmers are going to love it. Not only because they have a second residence, it's going to increase the value of their property for nothing. Well, it might cost them, 100 grand or 200 grand to build a second residence, but gee, it's going to make the property go up a lot more than that. So, and it's going to make people living in the country more attractive. So it's it's something that's going to really affect a lot of people.
And help the local economies, the carpet shops,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Help everybody. Help everybody. So
on the other branch on that tree, John Ruddick, is the whole legislation around tiny homes being allowed on people's properties. You can have a tiny home on your property in New South Wales for no longer than 3 months, and then it has to move to a separate title. So you could have a large property. I'm on 17 acres of rural property. I would dearly love to help some old people out who are struggling and they want to park their tiny home somewhere. I'd dearly love to be able to offer them that ability, but there's no guarantee that we can keep them there for long. Those sorts of things in times of a housing crisis, we should all be allowed to help our brothers and sisters out.
So just explain to me, Hoody, what is a tiny home?
It's a mobile home. It's like not a caravan, but it's a small home that's on wheels. It's transportable. It can be moved. There's great leaps and bounds in design of tiny homes. It's a thriving industry. It's a little 1-bedroom, shared family room kind of setup with a bathroom and toilet, fully self-contained. A lot of them are solar powered. They've got composting toilets and all of that. They have very, very small footprint on the landscape. And they're beautiful. Some of them are very aesthetically pleasing. But legislation's come in saying that you can't have a tiny home on your property for more than 3 months. Then it's got to move. Oh, yeah. That's something that a lot of people that own farms would really dearly love you to include in this inquiry. I, for one, would really love it. I mean, Michelle and I have been working in community service for about nearly 20 years. And we are flabbergasted at the number of women in particular in their 60s and 70s who are no longer married, whose husband either died or kicked her out for somebody else. They're sleeping in their cars. Some of them have a little tiny home or a caravan, and they're not allowed to park it anywhere. We've got to find a way to be able to express our compassion. Those things, especially on like my block, as I said, is 17 acres. You wouldn't even notice if a tiny home was on our place. So,
well, I'll look into that tomorrow, Hoody. I wasn't aware it was an issue.
Yeah, it's a real issue, and it's all.
Do you want to send me a little email with a few links that I can read up on it?
Absolutely will, mate. Absolutely will. So I'm really glad I raised it. So I think that's a great initiative, Johnny Larder. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's so right, Hoody. I mean, they get move-on orders after 3 months. You can't park them there for longer than that.
There you go. Your
councils will enforce that. So you smack on, and that would provide so much benefit to people in times of crisis. And a lot of people don't want any more than that either, Hoody, do they? A single person or a couple, they're happy.
Minimalist.
Yeah.
So,
Minimalist.
John Larder, you're saying that the restriction is caused by the local government or the state government?
Well, I couldn't be 100% certain on that, John, but I know the local government enforce it because they'll say that it can't be there as a permanent thing. It'd be like somebody living permanently in a caravan on your site. They for whatever reason, I don't know why it is, but certain councils obviously have rules in relation to it.
So we're happy to have people camping in cars in public reserves and then being moved on by the police. And in several cases in Brisbane, in the Logan area, front-end loaders turned up and picked up everyone's goods and chattels from council reserves and put them into dump trucks and took them to the tip, leaving them with nothing. And you've got overzealous mayors running around saying we don't want these people in our shire. Well, it's not their fault. This is just ludicrous. This is not Australian. We should all be standing together on these issues. So tiny homes is a wonderful solution. There's lots of companies building them and a lot of people build their own and they're very, very good at it.
I'm not sure they'd be so well received up at the Blue Mountains Council, though, Hoody. I'm pretty sure they'd knock that on the head up there. They're not too
Well,
happy.
the mayor of Katoomba, the mayor of the Blue Mountains could live in a tiny home. There's not
Yeah.
much time, is there? Anyway, we won't go there. We won't go there. All right, I think we've exhausted your time, John Ruddick. It's been a real pleasure as always.
Yeah, just in closing, John, just maybe a few words about Mai Lee. We had her on. Yeah, and she's obviously waiting on her verdict now.
Well, look, she's just such a wonderful, wonderful Christian lady. She's got such a inspiring life story. She's a refugee from bloody Pol Pot. Gets out of Pol Pot. There's been worse genocides. There's been worse genocides in terms of the number of people dying, but Pol Pot killed 1/3 of Cambodia. That's pretty bad, right? Now she got out, and probably on a raft, lived in a refugee camp, probably in Malaysia, comes to Australia, gets into Sydney University Medical School, and she's converted to Christianity. She really loves the Lord, loves her faith, and she was for many many years a GP up at Castle Hill, and I've never known a GP more loved by the community. Okay, most of these GPs, it's just a job for them, right? They knock off at 5. They don't really care about the patients. Mai Lee's got the most beautiful heart where she just loves the patients. And she ran for us at the state election in 2023 in Castle Hill. She got this super duper high vote for a minor party, right? A lot of people probably said, I don't really like the Libertarians much, but I love Mai Lee. I'm going to vote for her. Okay, so she's this great person. And of course, she had courage during COVID. And so then the good old HCCC, the Healthcare Complaints Commission, has to come out and try and wreck her life over, and I understand. No one's ever complained about her. It's just the bureaucrats are complaining. It's not like there was all these patients lining up saying, "Oh, Mai Lee was terrible. Mai Lee almost cost me my life." Okay, no, just that she's just upset the bureaucrats. This HCCC, this Healthcare Complaints Commission. I had dinner with a doctor a week ago, and he was saying every doctor in New South Wales lives in fear of them, even if they're not political. Okay, and they said that no other state has anything like this. This HCCC thing, it can just knock you out of being a medical professional. You might say, you might get, there's some poor old AFL player, he's got accused of being a homophobic slur. They go on about all this crap all the time. You might be a doctor who's accidentally said something, might be cranky and he said something. You can get knocked out for that, okay? You might say something about the Palestine-Israel situation, and a bureaucrat, okay? So these doctors just live in fear. And this is why you don't see doctors very much engaged in politics. And generally speaking, doctors are sort of, pretty smart people. They should be concerned about politics. But you hardly, because they live, and it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible, so let's hope Mai Lee Trin can win. I know it's been going on and on and on and on and on. I've been happy to go and stand with her there a couple of times. And she's just, all the politics and everything else aside, she really is a saint of a person.
She's got a petition. Sorry,
go on, mate.
Oh, she's got a petition going to the parliamentary oversight committee into the HCCC, of which Dr. Joe McGurr is the chairperson. And I ran into Dr. Joe today at a meeting at the council in relation to the demerging of Snowy Valleys, and I said to him, "Oh, how are you going, Joe? How's the COVID situation going?" And he said, "I hope you don't mind if I don't comment." So he's been a very avid supporter for the mRNA vaccines, our Dr. Joe, and it beggars belief to me that people in the medical industry that are so intelligent and educated can be so ignorant to what's going on here.
What staggered me about the Mai Lee Trin case, John Ruddick, is the fact that an expert witness call for the HCCC actually admitted that Mai Lee's treatment saved the life of the lady concerned. So, I mean, to me, it's just what on earth is going on? If we can't smell a rat in the cheese factory in that, there's something really off with our senses.
It's these like little bureaucrats on power trips. This is the really really purest libertarians, people like Harvey Millet. They believe over time we can phase the government out entirely. And they say, look at that. A lot of your viewers will think that's really crazy,
Well, what
but
a great idea.
no. Well, look, they say, look, the government is just the most heavily armed gang out there, and it dresses itself up with all these things that gives it sort of credibility. But the government's got the guns. They got the army, they got the police, they got the intelligence agencies. So they got the guns and the power, and that's what keeps people in line. Now, what would happen if we have whenever we've done it in history, whenever we've had a small government like Ronald Reagan or Margaret Thatcher, and Australia for most of its history has had a relatively small government, and we always boom and flourish. But the really radical libertarians like Harvey Millet, they say, well, look, you can get the government down a lot, but unless you rip it up entirely, it will always grow back. See, I've spent most of my life revering Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher because they did great things in the 80s. We had a good 3 decades after that. But the radical libertarians say, look, they didn't go far enough. They got the government down, because now they say the government's now bigger than it was before the Reagan and Thatcher revolutions. So they've got a point. And people will be out there saying, well, how are we going to build the roads and how are we going to do all this? All these things can be done through the private sector and through voluntary cooperation and contracts. There could be private courts. So that's it. Now, people out there may not agree with it, okay? But look, and I know you said you wanted to go 10 minutes ago, John Graham, but let me just finish this right. What we say in the Libertarian Party is this. We say that the size of the government now is about 55% of the economy. So it means about 55% of everything the productive people make gets taken by federal government taxes, state government taxes, local government taxes, right? When you factor everything, it's hard to calculate. Let's say it's 55%. The old traditional Liberal Party would have said it should be about 20%. The old traditional Labor Party would have said it should be 40%. The classical libertarians would say it should be about 10%. So what we say is everyone, except for the Greens and the Communists, everyone says, I agree, yeah, 55% is too much. So what we say is there's a freedom bus. Jump on the freedom bus. Help us get the government down smaller. Now, if you're a traditional Labor Party person, you get the government down to 30%, you can hop off the bus. You say, no, we don't want to go any further. Then some people might want to get off when the government gets down to 20% of the economy. Okay, fine. Well, what we say is get on the bus with us, help us fight for a smaller government, and let's see when you want to get off. Now, some of us might want to go all the way down to 0%. Like John Marder's good friend Rob Cribb. He'll say, let's go to 0%. And other people might say, no, we can't. Let's get it down to 10%. But we're all united now that 55% is too high and we've got to cut it significantly. So people should help us join the Libertarian Party, help us grow, and get off the freedom bus when you feel like it. But it may well be that when you get down to the mark where you thought you were going to get off, you might think, no, this is going good. We'll push it a little bit further.
Written and authorised by John Ruddick for the Libertarian Party. Look, I think Johnny in that photo, if you look at that photo, there's your new Parliament House at the top of the hill. So basically, where Johnny's sitting is on the roof of the old Parliament House. I think that should be the standard we should aim for. We need to get a government that will fit inside the old Parliament House, which is a very small building compared to the other one. And let's go back and just be Australian and live our lives again without this oppressive government overreach. So there's the measure. The building's already there. All the furniture's still in place. Eh?
I like that idea. Bring back old government house. Make the government smaller. I like it, Hoody.
Let's do it. Let's turn Parliament House into a tiny home, John Ruddick.
Sounds good, Jonathan.
Yeah. All right. Well, you want to keep going from it? You got any more paid political announcements you'd like to make?
No. We're all done tonight. I've got my spiel in.
Yeah, no, it's just been really great having you on. And as always, I'll close with a prayer and we'll just come back and say goodbye.
Okay.
Lord Father in heaven, we've been talking about matters that pertain to the sovereignty of citizens who are your children, Lord. And those of us who believe in you know that we belong to you. And Father, we just want to honour the government in heaven. And if we do honour the government in heaven and we follow the design principles set out for our creation, Father God, in actual fact, we wouldn't need government because we'd all be compassionate, we'd all care about our neighbour, and we'd just do the right thing. So, Lord, we just pray that there will come a time when all these things are put behind us and we can live in ultimate peace. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 So, go on, John. You want to say something else?
No. I was just going to say how much I've enjoyed it, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, it was really great. We love having you on. It's always enlightening, very enlightening and refreshing. You know, I can go to bed tonight dreaming about, I can have a nightmare about 50 years of Albo, or I can dream about 0% government. That would be a
Good
great
stuff.
dream.
Good
That'd be
stuff.
a great
Good stuff. Do that.
Johnny Lardy, you've often been heard to say,
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
you couldn't make this stuff up. John Ruddick, you're a champ, mate. God bless you and all who
Okay.
sail with you, and all the best on the 31st. Give them heaps, and let's get out there, Australia. If you love your country, stand up for it. And don't forget, what you did yesterday got you to today. Stay out of the trees, everyone. We'll see you next time on Club Grubbery. Bye for now.